All right, let's get right into it. There has been a ton of noise online about a supposed Iranian strike near Tel Aviv. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the story behind those headlines and try to separate what's real from what's just noise. So it all kicked off with headlines just like this one, using some really powerful language. You see a phrase like direct hit, and it immediately paints a picture, right? It frames the event as this huge success for one side and, well, a pretty major failure for the other. And, that kind of language feeds this wider feeling that a lot of people have, that the whole confrontation between Iran and Israel is shifting into a much more dangerous, much more direct phase. We're moving beyond limited exchanges into something else entirely.
So that really brings us to the question we're trying to answer here. With all this drama and sensational framing, what's actually going on? Let's start peeling back the layers. So first up, perception versus reality. We're going to look at the noise and the signal. Because in a conflict like this, the story that goes viral and the actual strategic meaning are often two very, very different things. So here's the thing. The most crucial point isn't whether every headline is 100% accurate, word for word. The real story is the fact that central Israel, we're talking areas near Tel Aviv, is now part of the conversation when it comes to Iranian projectiles. That fact alone tells you just how serious this has all become.
And check this out. This is where it gets really interesting when you break it down. The viral narrative, that's all about a direct hit, widespread panic, and national humiliation. But the core significance? It's more nuanced, but honestly just as serious. We're talking about projectiles near Tel Aviv, public confidence being put to the test, and the real risk to critical symbolic infrastructure.
Okay, so how does this all build into the strategic message? Well, an attack like this is about so much more than just the physical damage it might cause. It is absolutely about sending a signal. Just think about that term, direct hit. It's an incredibly powerful tool in itself. It implies precision. It implies success. It suggests that all those expensive defense systems were just bypassed. Whether it's technically true or not, that phrase immediately shapes how everybody understands what happened.
And if the target really is an aerospace facility, that message gets even louder. I mean, this isn't just any building. It stands for high technology, for surveillance, for air power. Hitting a site like this is a way of saying, hey, look, your most advanced, most sensitive infrastructure, it's within our reach.
And this quote it nails the whole challenge perfectly. In a modern conflict, the story about what happened, the perception, it spreads almost instantly. Sometimes it's even faster than the official facts. The battle over the narrative is just as real as the physical battle. All right, so what actually happens inside Israel when an event like this occurs? Any incident near a major hub like Tel Aviv doesn't just trigger one simple response. Oh no, it sets off this complex, cascading chain reaction. You really have three key layers. First, you've got the immediate emergency response, securing the site, making sure people are safe. Then the intelligence and security folks jump in, trying to figure out exactly what happened and why. And finally, you get the political response. How do we reassure the public and control the story? And you have to remember, this isn't a one-time thing. It's the cumulative pressure. Repeated alerts, repeated claims of damage, it all adds up. And over time, it can create this deep, persistent atmosphere of uncertainty, which can really start to chip away at public confidence. And all of that pressure, all that public anxiety, it ultimately lands on one person's desk. The political leadership, in this case, the prime minister, becomes the absolute focal point for all of it. Which brings us to the intense, and I mean intense, pressure on the prime minister. Every single military event like this is instantly transformed into a very public test of the government's ability to protect its own citizens. And suddenly, the leadership is slammed with a whole cascade of critical questions. Was this target symbolic? Was it functional? Both. Does this mean Iran is changing its strategy? And the biggest question of all, how is this affecting public trust? And can we continue to project an image of control? And that leads us to our final layer, the information war. This is where a state-level conflict gets incredibly personal, turning these huge strategic events into stories about individual leaders. A really common tactic is to attach these highly emotional claims to the event. So the narrative shifts away from a strike on a facility and becomes a story about a leader's personal humiliation or their panic. It makes the story more viral, more relatable, and a lot more personal. But this is exactly where we have to be disciplined and pump the brakes.
The sources we've looked at show no reliable verified evidence for these specific emotional claims. In fact, they point out that the Prime Minister appeared in public after these rumors started circulating. So this emotional framing, it's best understood as part of the narrative war, not as an established fact.
And this really is the key takeaway. Even if you strip away all the unverified emotional stuff, the core event, just the discussion of Iranian projectiles targeting strategic sites near Tel Aviv, that remains incredibly significant all on its own.
Ultimately, this whole incident is a perfect illustration of what modern conflict actually looks like. It's not about tanks and soldiers on a front line anymore. It's a war fought across networks, supply chains, data systems, and of course, narratives, where things like drones and strategic infrastructure are the new battlegrounds. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. In a world where perception moves just as fast as the projectiles themselves, which one ultimately has the power to cause more